I was just thinking, 71 years ago, a young man, at the age of 24, was kneeling beside a muddy pond praying. Perhaps he'd even been praying all night long. Now, towards the east, it was the dawning of a new day.
That young man's name was William Marion Branham. And as a new day was dawning that morning in 1933, so was a new day dawning for all of God's people. For God had sent his messenger among us. Just as Jesus came and walked with his followers along the shores of the Galilee 2,000 years ago, we too have walked with God in our day. He equipped a man, a human vessel, with a gift that would demonstrate the presence of Jesus Christ among us, just as he promised in the book of Malachi.
William Branham lived such a life of simplicity, mainly here in this little river city of Jeffersonville, Indiana. He built and pastored a humble little tabernacle while ignoring fame and fortune which could have easily been his with the unique ministry that God had given to him. But his sole purpose in life was to preach and live the word of Jesus Christ before his generation.
My name is Joseph Branham, and this is my brother Billy Paul Branham. Today we would like to invite you to come with us as we tour the city that has seen the footsteps of this prophet. A place where God marched again in human flesh across the face of this generation in a man named William Branham. My father was born in the hills of southern Kentucky, just about 12 miles from the Tennessee state line. When he was only 3 years old, one day as he was playing outside with his brother, he heard a voice speak to him saying, "You will live near a city called New Albany." The following year, he and his family left Kentucky and moved north to Jeffersonville, Indiana, just 3 miles east of New Albany. Both cities are located on the north bank of the Ohio River, and between them is a landmark that is known as the Falls of the Ohio. In very ancient times, the shallow rapids of the falls was a crossing spot for migrating herds as they journeyed to the salt licks in Kentucky. But when our nation was young, the falls posed a serious navigational barrier for the explorers and settlers who wanted to follow the Ohio River westward, and eventually this place became a natural stopping point for travelers. Today, Jeffersonville, which is located on a peninsula of land that juts into the path of the river just above the falls, has once again become a stopping point for travelers from around the world. They come to do what we are going to be doing today, visiting some of the places in and around this river community that has seen the footsteps of God's prophet.
As a child, one of my dad's favorite treats was to be able to make an occasional visit to this local candy store here in downtown Jeffersonville, where for just 2 cents he would buy a bag of Mr. Schimpf's delicious cinnamon Red Hots. Today, the Schimpf family is still making these Red Hots, using the same recipe and even some of the same big copper kettles that were used some 90 years ago.
Is there anything else I can get for you?
Believers from all over the world visit this little candy shop that Dad spoke of with such fondness, And like us, they can't resist taking home a package of these Red Hots that have now become world famous. If I were asked to name some of the most notable milestones of William Branham's life, I believe the phenomenal event that took place at this very spot here would certainly top the list. It was on the 11th of June in 1933, and Dad was conducting a baptismal service here in the Ohio River at the end of Spring Street. He had just preached a 2 weeks revival, and the people being baptized were the converts from those services, including Dad's 73-year-old grandfather, Francis Marion Harvey. My mother, Sister Hope, was snapping photos with her brand new Kodak Brownie camera. And as the 17th candidate for baptism walked out to where Dad was standing, in about 3 foot of water, suddenly a light that looked like a star appeared and hung over the place where he was baptizing. In an area of about 15 feet square, it suddenly began to churn, and a voice spoke, saying, "As John the Baptist was sent to forerun the first coming of Christ, you will forerun his second coming." In December of 1936, my mother, Sister Hope, fainted as she stood waiting for a bus that would take her to town to shop for Christmas presents. That night, here in this house, as Dad prayed, he saw a black sheet come down before him. Then he saw a flood rise in the streets of Jeffersonville, and an angel measured 22 feet of water at the corner of Spring and Court. 6 weeks later, what became known as the superflood of 1937 covered the entire Ohio Valley. The water was above flood stage in Jeffersonville for some 23 days. And just as the vision had shown, at the corner of Spring and Court Avenue, it measured 22 feet deep. Mother was hospitalized with pneumonia, and Dad had spent every day in his small boat assisting the rescue teams that patrolled the flooded areas, looking for survivors and bringing them to safety. During one particular terrifying rescue, his motor on his boat failed, and quickly he was caught in dangerous currents that rushed him towards the Ohio Falls. Calling out to God for mercy, he thought about the opportunity that he had had to evangelize and that he had rejected. He then cried out, "Lord, if you'll forgive me, I'll do anything that you want me to do." When he tried again to start the motor, this time it started immediately, and he was able to make his way safely to the shore. Mother's long bout with pneumonia severely had weakened her lungs, and within a few months, tuberculosis had invaded her body. She died at 11:10 p.m. on Wednesday, July the 21st, at the Clark County Memorial Hospital. She was just 24 years old. Her funeral was on that Saturday, July the 24th. On that same day, my sister Sharon Rose suddenly